Call the meeting to order. I know I'm a strange face. Ken is announced his absence last month, and so he stuck with me for the meeting. We met in closed session starting at 4 o'clock. We discussed the items that are listed in the agenda. We reached no reportable decisions. Anthony, on your first day, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Antonio. Oh, yeah.
Antonio? Start off real well.
Ready? Salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You gonna give the oath of office? Okay, our next order of business is to give the oath of office to our new student trustee, and I won't call you Anthony again, Antonio Gutierrez.
All right, Antonio. Right here. First of all, congratulations. You raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Antonio Gutierrez,
I, Antonio Gutierrez,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I swear I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I swear I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental
reservation
reservation
or purpose of
or
evasion,
purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties of which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Antonio. And your newest trustee.
Antonio, I assume you were briefed a little bit about how things work, either by Brad or Debbie Douglas or somebody. Is that true?
Yes.
And during the course of meetings, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And we welcome your input on issues that you feel that you know something about and will be a benefit to all of us. So don't be afraid to speak up. This is time for public comment. Per board policy 2530, any person may address the board at this time either on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker, with a maximum of 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. That said, are there any public comments concerning items which are on the agenda? If so, would you please come to the podium and give us your name and share with us what you would like to share?
Joshua Geist, English Division Chair, Writing Center Director. Appearing on the board's consent calendar today is the dismissal of Anya Armstrong, Senior Instructional Specialist for the Writing Center in Hanford, whose primary job responsibilities focused on tutoring students and supporting student tutors. Anya received no formal evaluation, was given no opportunity to discuss unsatisfactory performance, and was provided no plan for improvement. The feedback that she received from the students she served was universally positive, and she received no negative response to any question from any student surveyed anonymously as part of the Writing Center's data collection. Anya was a highly valued part of the Writing Center team, and the student tutors who worked most closely with her wanted to convey to their board their appreciation for Anya's work and to communicate the impact her termination has had on the Writing Center, on themselves, and on the other students Anya supported. I share their appreciation, and I thank the board for allowing them the opportunity to express what Anya meant to them and to the Writing Center. We have 3 of our tutors here also.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Darcy Ledoux, and I just have a few words to say about Anya. Many students would agree with me on the fact that Anya was a well-admired member of the Writing Center. She always went above and beyond her duties to meet her students' needs in the Writing Center. For instance, there was a student wandering past the Writing Center on the first week of the school semester who looked a little lost. Anya noticed and immediately walked up to the student to figure out why. She then walked with the student to help them find their destination with ease. Many times, I would see Anya assisting students in other departments like the math lab whenever she saw the need. Furthermore, the time I've spent working with her has drastically impacted my college experience. Thanks to her insightful advice, I've picked up effective organizational skills and schedule strategies to help me be more successful. She guided me through effective public speaking skills to prepare for the Writing Center presentations. She would help me with my anatomy studies, and she would quiz me on terms and definitions whenever I felt overwhelmed. Anya was very alert and attentive in our sessions. More than once, I would get a student that would make me feel uncomfortable in the session. Anya would notice this and immediately take over in response. She was highly skilled at keeping things under control and secure in the Writing Center. She sincerely cared about the success of her client students and all of the other students. Since her absence, 5 students have already come into the Writing Center looking specifically for her expertise. The Writing Center just isn't the same without her, and it's a shame she was let go because of the huge asset to the department that she was.
Anyone else wish to speak?
My name is Damien, and I have been a student tutor for COS, the COS Writing Center, for 2 years. Before I begin, I would like to preface my statement by saying that I am not very good at public speaking. I do, however, believe that what I have to say about Anya is worth my being here. This being said, I ask that you excuse my stammering should it occur. In my time at the Writing Center, I've had both the privilege and the pleasure of working with a wide scope of individuals from all manner of background and personality. Today, I'm fortunate enough to come before you having met the brightest and most enthusiastic of them all, Anya. She is, without a shadow of a doubt, the happiest, most energetic person I have ever met, and her attitude has had a wondrous impact in the Hanford Writing Center, where she and I worked. Personally, I've never been one to quickly settle into a new and unfamiliar environment, which the Writing Center was for me when I joined and still was prior to my time with Anya. You see, Anya made it a top priority each and every day to befriend and make welcome every individual that walked into the Writing Center, myself included. Over the course of my semester working with Anya, I found myself much more comfortable in the Writing Center, and her infectious positive energy had visibly spread to the rest of the center. In my experience, both students and tutors gave nothing but glowing praise for Anya and the work environment she fostered. Every day I worked with Anya was a day of high spirit and energy, which is a statement I am certain all of my colleagues would echo. She was a highly valued member of our Writing Center, one that will be sorely missed. Simply put, the Writing Center will never feel complete to me again without our Anya. I hope that my words have shown you how important Anya is to all of us at the Writing Center. Thank you for hearing me and allowing me to share.
You're a pretty good public speaker. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Michael Hasso. I too am a Writing Center tutor out in Hanford. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to thank my coworkers Darcy and Damien for being here alongside me, and to the Board of Trustees for allowing us to make these statements. I began tutoring at the Hanford campus at the beginning of last spring semester, around the same time Anya was hired on to be our new coordinator. And I have to admit, I had a lot of anxiety going into last semester starting work in a new space. But Anya was there to help me ease into my transition into the new work environment. Since I was scheduled to work in the Writing Center nearly every day of the work week, I became familiar with Anya's work ethic. She kept our workspace organized, well stocked with supplies, and made the space into a reflection of who we are as tutors and students. There were many cases where we had students who would ask to work with Anya rather than the student tutors. She shared with me so many new tutoring techniques that I now consider invaluable and use regularly in my appointments. Anya not only took an interest in making me and my coworkers better tutors, but she took the time to get to know us, who we were outside of the center as well. She had quickly learned that outside of COS, I perform and organize poetry events locally. She surprised me one night by actually attending one of my readings. Throughout the remainder of the semester, I took her copies of my drafts of poems to receive honest feedback and constructive criticism. She helped make our space as welcoming as it possibly could by inspiring us as tutors to think both critically and creatively. She found a way to bring out the best in ourselves and in the students we work with. I'm hoping Darcy, Damien, and I can continue to work in the Hanford Writing Center with just a fraction of the same energy and enthusiasm she brought into our space. Thank you again.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else wish to address the board? Thank you.
Not on the agenda?
The next is items not on the agenda. Does anyone wish to address the board for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the regular agenda. First one is a student trustee report. You're brand new. Are we putting you on the spot, or do you have one?
I have one.
Great. Floor is yours.
All right, so I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Antonio. I graduated from Hanford High School in 2017. This is my second year at COS. I'm an economics major, and in addition to filling in as the new student trustee, I'm also the commissioner, of finance on campus. And I'll start with the report. So the Student Senate Board was filled by the second school week as stated in the Constitution. Coming into the school year, only 4 of the 9 positions were filled, which meant we had to appoint 5 of the positions, which were the vice president, the student trustee, the student ambassador, the commissioner of activities, and commissioner of records. And as of last week, senators have been appointed to all campus committees. Past events that we'd like to report are that we participated in Welcome Week. We hosted Club Social and Club Rush, where a total of 27 clubs participated, where they were able to recruit. And we had activities and offered gift card rewards for winners. And this past weekend, the COS football team had the first official regular season game. Some upcoming events. Tomorrow, we will also be hosting Transfer Day, where students looking to transfer can gain information from colleges and look at their options. And this Thursday on the 13th, we will also be hosting Constitution Day, which is a day mandated by the state for schools who offer financial aid to their students. We'll be passing out booklets regarding the Constitution in both English and Spanish. And later on, next month, from the 19th to the 21st, the Student Senate Board, we will be representing COS at a statewide convention in LA, where we'll be receiving training in leadership roles. And that's all I have to report at this time.
Thank you. Let me ask you a couple of questions. What are you going to do when you get through with COS?
Plan on transferring.
You know where?
No, but we'll be applying to both CSUs and UCs.
Great.
And based on my results, I'll choose go on from there.
Well, thank you. It was a good report. Any questions of Antonio?
No, welcome. Good to have you.
We should note that Antonio is a second-year member of our President Scholars Program.
That's right. You told me that. I'd forgotten.
Perfect.
Okay. Are there any board member reports? I'll start with Mr. Sherman.
All I can say is I attended the football fundraiser. Ken Nunes and I were at the football, and I was so impressed with the players and the students there that every one of them came up and introduced themselves to us, so I was very impressed with them. So.
Good. Lori?
No report.
And I have no report. Foundation report, Mr. Foster.
Yes, I have no report other than leaving you with 3 dates of upcoming fundraising events. Make sure they are on your calendar.
I noticed that Harry Towle is being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir.
You know, I didn't know he went to COS, and I can't believe it took us that long to get around to him.
Well, he did not attend COS during the traditional time frame, but he definitely was a student here.
Well, that's why then. Okay, well, I don't think I want to miss that.
Yes.
Accreditation report, Dr. Cerna.
Good evening. As we know, the accreditation visit is just around the corner. The site team will be here October 1st through 4th. But I also wanted to mention that on September 26th, we will have a forum for everyone who's interested in attending. That'll be from 3 p.m. to 3:45 p.m., and it will be on all 3 campuses. Be looking at your email because we will have lots of prizes and information coming forward, and we will be giving out some gifts and for people who win quizzes and participate in learning about accreditation. And on so on that at that forum and on September 26th, we'll be giving out 3 grand prizes, one on each campus for those who participate and attend that forum and learn more about accreditation. Also, we'll be sending out information with the exact time and location soon, but we were planning a meet and greet for the team for our governance groups and the board on October 1st in the afternoon. And the closing meeting will be open to all constituencies. It will be on October 4th, sometime around 10 or 11 a.m. And we'll be sending out more information to you soon. There also usually are about 2 other open forums, and we will send that information out.
Okay, so the board will get that as an invite.
Yeah, we'll get an official invite
Perfect.
on your calendar. We just don't, we're working right now, Megan
Timeframe.
is working directly with the chair's assistant, executive assistant, and they're working on the calendar now. So as soon as we have all that information, we will get that to you, but we'll get the official invites out right away.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Dr. Cerna? Thank you. That leads us to the superintendent's report. Mr. Calvin.
Thank you, Mr. Zumwalt. Tonight, we get to meet 4 new faculty members, as well as 2 managers. And I think Dr. Lacerna will introduce at least her dean or division chairs in order to make those introductions.
Great. So we were able to hire an additional full-time faculty member this year in Hanford in our biology department, and I'm going to have Dr. Atecho introduce him, our dean of arts and of science and math.
Arts and science. That's a combo.
Hello, everyone. Very pleased today to introduce you to our most recent hire in biology, Mr. Noah Decker. Noah is a native Californian from the Bay Area, and he did his undergraduate years at UC Santa Cruz, where he studied molecular, cellular, and developmental biology, and also had a minor in German. So he's one of our first Deutschified professors in the science area. He chose to continue his scientific training at my alma mater at UC Davis. And there he took a very interesting course of study in what's known as, it's kind of a nutritional biology, which is kind of a mixture of that blend where food comes and bugs and bacteria get together. And they do some interesting things. So we're going to take him over to Carl's Jr. and see what happens. But of course, he had a wide range of study while he was there, and it was really, really interesting stuff that he began to uncover, including how things interact in your intestines with viruses and bacteria. So we're looking forward to some really embellished labs in Hanford. So I'm going to get Kristen ready for that. Noah has about 11 years of teaching experience at the community college level. He's taught at American River College in Sacramento, Solano College, Sacramento City College, and also at UC Davis. While at American River College, he served as a member of the Academic Senate, and he also taught at Solano State Prison for a while. Noah is currently teaching, as I mentioned, microbiology at Hanford. And so please join me in welcoming Noah Decker to our faculty.
Thank you, everybody, for the chance to be here. I wasn't expecting to say a lot. It has been a long day, and my drive is pretty far. But I've been lucky enough to be here at College of the Sequoias. Starting in the summertime, I was able to get a little bit of an early jump start to get a feel for the lay of the land and understand what the student body here is, and a little bit different than what I'm used to up in Sacramento, and what they really need to move forward in a more productive and focused way. So I'm glad that I've got the jump on that, and I can kind of see, based on the midterm results of my first exam, which came out today, the road that's before me and the challenges that I should rise up to make sure my students are better prepared for their futures. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Decker? Thank you very much. And good luck to you. And Hanford's a good place to be, by the way.
Okay, I am going to introduce our second faculty member, Christopher Stillwell, if he can come up. Since we were in between deans at the time that Christopher got hired, I was fortunate to sit on his committee, and we'll introduce him. And so, well, actually, I should say our dean is no longer here, that was with us on that hiring committee. So Christopher is in our English as a second language program. And so he has a bachelor's degree in psychology and theater arts, a double major from the University of Pennsylvania. And he has a master's degree in teachers of English to speakers of other languages from Teachers College in Columbia University. And he also completed a second master's degree in education from the University of California, Irvine. And he is completing his doctorate in education from UC Irvine as well. He has served at, or was, an instructor coordinator and assistant director for 6 years at Konda University of International Studies in Chiba International, which is just outside of Tokyo, I just learned. And most recently, Christopher has been teaching in continuing education for UC Irvine. And so he moved here from the Irvine area, and we're really excited to have him aboard. So please welcome Christopher Stillwell.
Yeah, I'll just say the same thing that I heard from Noah, which is I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you. So far I've had a nice experience working with the students and my colleagues, and I'm really enjoying everything. So if anybody has any questions, I'll
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Stillwell?
Well, I was going to ask Noah as well, but what made you guys choose our valley in Visalia? Was it family, or just you liked our area? You liked the summer 100-degree weather?
Well, I like the students, for one thing. I feel like the kinds of students I was preparing to work with at UC Irvine are similar to the ones here. And actually, I finished my PhD over there. I should
Okay.
add.
Oh, good.
And love the area, actually. We just got out to Sequoias National Park this weekend. It was fantastic.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
I think I was born in the wrong place in California, honestly.
Yeah.
Although I love the Bay Area and the formative experience that I had there, I'm kind of a sort of a country boy who lost his way at heart, so to speak, I suppose. So there's definitely a lot of appeal to the area. There's some draw here that I think is going to keep me happy for a while.
Good. And have both of you settled in Visalia or in the outlying communities? Where are you living? You're out in the country. Okay, so you really are. You're going back to your roots of some sort.
Carving pre-life roots.
Well, good.
We're in the area, and we have a refrigerator and air conditioning. We almost have what we need.
I have that too. Let me just.
He likes the country, but he has an AC, I'm sure. Welcome to both of you.
So we also, as you know, usually have some full-time temporary hires every year. And so we have 2 full-time temporary faculty that will be 1 year with us in English. And our newest dean, Richard Lebin, was able to be on the hiring committee for them. So I'm going to ask Richard to come up and introduce them.
Hi, good evening. It's really nice being here, and this was my first full-time hiring committee here at COS, so it's a real pleasure. Really, it was a tight timeline, just because we always have more students than English faculty, and it was nice going through all the interviews and learning a little bit about each one of them. First, let me introduce John Stern. He has a bachelor's degree in journalism with a minor in creative writing from Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University, and a master's of fine arts in creative writing, nonfiction from Southern New Hampshire University. John's been teaching English since 2013. Prior to teaching, John was a journalist before joining a family business and ran 2 of their 3 family companies. And on a more personal note, He's married with twin boys and an older son who's a paratrooper in the U.S. Army. Please join me in welcoming John.
I was hoping my partner would be going first, so I could see what he was going to say. This is one of the first colleges I got hired on when I left the business community. So 5 years later, to get a one-year temporary position and have a home for a year is like really exciting and thrilling. So I'm just glad to be here, working the dual enrollment, and hopefully turn into something bigger and better. So,
Welcome aboard. Any questions for,
oh, sorry.
any questions for Mr. Stillwell? Stillwell, just left. Huh? I'm only one late.
We've moved on.
Hey, you didn't call him Anthony, so.
Yeah. Mr. Stern, question for Mr. Stern? No? Okay, thank you, welcome aboard.
Okay, and our second English faculty is Jacob Hernandez. He earned his bachelor's in English and his MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry from Fresno State University. He's taught here at COS and Clovis Community College since last year, 2017. While at Fresno State, he assisted with students in the Upward Bound Trio program and served as the inaugural graduate artist in the Laureate Lab Visual Word Studio, an open art studio and community space on the Fresno State campus, started by former poet laureate of the United States, Juan Felipe Herrera. And I just learned that about him when he sent in his bio, and so I'm really interested in learning more about that. That's really interesting to me. So please welcome Jacob.
Hello, I'm Jacob. I'm super excited to be a part of COS. I enjoy the community. I enjoy the students. They just surprise me every semester, and I'm excited about it. I've taught other places, but COS is kind of where I enjoy it. I did work with Juan Felipe Herrera at the Laureate Lab, and working with Juan Felipe is like one of the most bizarre experiences. He's every bit an artist. He's every bit of an artist and like creative mind. So it's kind of like chasing around like a chicken. I grew up in the country of Colorado, so it's kind of like chasing around a chicken with no head. You have to find him and talk to him and say, hey, what are we doing? But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Nice to meet you all. See you all.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome aboard. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez?
No, thank you. Good.
Thanks, guys. Okay, we also get to meet two new managers, and for those, I'll introduce our vice presidents first, Miss Christine Staton.
Stand up here, Ashley. Okay, good evening. The district recently created a part-time management position, which is pretty unusual. It's indirectly funded by the various commercial and residential rental properties that the district now owns. This position is 24 hours a week and 11 months a year. So you can imagine that we knew it would be tricky to find someone to fill that position. But to find just the right applicant for this unique part-time position was a little tricky. We wanted someone with business experience who could oversee some of the district's larger purchasing transactions, disposals of surplus property, handle our rental properties, assist with contracts and MOUs for the district, and a lot of other things as well. So we're really happy to have Ashley Collins. She applied for and was offered the position of Manager of Purchasing and Business Support for COS. Again, a new manager position, part-time. The business support can be translated as all those other duties as assigned. It's just been wonderful. So I've been able to ask her to help in numerous ways. Ashley lives in Tulare. She's worked for the last, I think she's helped as well. She may share a little more. Worked for the last 10 years as Chief Financial Officer / business manager for her family's construction business called AAC Construction Incorporated. And she has a degree in kinesiology from Fresno State University, a teaching credential from Chapman University, and she's also done additional accounting and bookkeeping work for other ag or construction-related businesses in the area. So we're very pleased to have Ashley joining our team.
Hello. So as she said, my name is Ashley Collins, and I was born and raised in Tulare. I went to Fresno State with the mindset that I was going to be a PE teacher and coach, and then I had my own kids. I had twins, so I have twin 8-year-old girls, and then I had a third daughter she's 5 years old. And I've been working in the construction industry with my husband for the last 10 years, done property management. So this is a perfect fit. 11 months a year, 24 hours a week. I can still be a mom, and I can still do all the things that Christine and the admin services need from me. So any questions?
Questions?
Oh, welcome.
When you're doing property management, for us, what will you be doing?
From what Christine has told me, I'm going to be collecting rent checks, giving out notices, possibly filling out leases, possibly when we have a current property on Mooney, when we're going to be cleaning them out in about a year so that we can turn that over and use that property for something else. I'm going to be dealing with possessory taxes and dealing with the county and the assessor's office. I've been doing a little research on another property we own regarding the owner that it used to be and tracking them down and their heirs and things like that. So as far as I know, that's what I'm doing so
You're
far.
not going to be showing the property?
No, I'm not. I don't have a real estate license. I can't show the property. I can only just do the back end of the work.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll invite up our new VP of Student Services, Jessica Morrison, to make our next introduction.
Good evening. It is with tremendous pleasure that I introduce Ming Vang as the Interim Dean of Student Services. Ming comes to us with a background in mathematics and counseling. He's taught at both the middle school, high school, became a counselor at the high school, and then we got lucky enough that he was accepted for one of our positions about 11 years ago in general counseling. I've worked with Ming in the capacity of division chair on committees, and I'm a little biased towards Ming. He's definitely the most humble, as you'll see. He's going to have trouble coming up here talking about himself. Humble, kind, but student-centered faculty member that I've ever come across, and I mean that. When we get into disputes within our division, he's the first one to say, what's the impact on the student? What's the student experience? And kind of centers us and brings us right back. So I am thrilled to have Ming in this position for the year, and maybe he'll just love it and apply for it next year. I'm not sure, but Ming Vang.
No pressure.
I just want to say thank you to the board, and thank you to President Calvin, and thank you to Vice President Morrison for giving me the opportunity to try this position this year, and I look forward to fruitful and productive year. And this is only officially my second week, and it's been trial by fire. And I didn't realize how much paperwork comes across my desk. And so I have a much newer appreciation for all my fellow deans and senior managers in here. I don't know how you guys do it, but you guys are extraordinary people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. And after that introduction, we expect perfection.
So do I. Go get the paperwork done.
Okay, reports, Academic Senate President's Report Update. Mr. Turner, is he? Yes.
There is.
Had our first Academic Senate meeting, my first one. It went pretty good. We did spend a bit of time hearing from Project Rebound. The person who's running at Fresno State came to the Senate. We had a few other people. Brent was there. We have an initiative in one of the committees to explore that a little more. If you haven't heard about this, this is a program to help formerly incarcerated inmates, in their college education and all of the things around life that help. Fresno State actually has a grant, and they would, if we could start something here, we could actually help pilot students toward Fresno State. They've agreed to let us use their resources, but we're going to look more into it. There are many community colleges who are doing it around the state right now, but we'll let you know more about that later. Also just wanted to announce, if you didn't know, we finally got an Area A meeting here at the college. What that is there are 4 areas for the State Academic Senate. Our area runs from Bakersfield all the way to Oregon. Encompasses 28 districts or colleges, I'm not sure which. I think districts. So we're excited. In October, we'll be having representatives, Academic Senate representatives from all the way up the state coming here to talk about resolutions and other Academic Senate issues that will be taken to the plenary session in November. One other thing I'd like to say is we are going on our AB 705. You guys know what that is, I'm sure. Okay, so we are, everybody knows what AB 705 is by now. All right, so I want to congratulate Matt Bray and Eric Armstrong. They're doing a great job already in getting things started, along with Dr. Joseph Teller, our chair from the FEC committee. They've already got a really good plan for this year for training. Much needed training for all faculty and probably staff too, because we have to start looking at the way we educate a little differently now. We're all kind of responsible for the math and the English these days. And many of us, including me, need training in acceleration because, you know, I'm old school. I'm used to starting students, you know, at a basic level, but now we've got to start accelerating their instruction at the transfer level. So I'm looking forward to that training and learning how to do a better job myself. So next time I'll have our end of the year report. So that'll be a big thing. Any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Turner?
Thank you.
Are you having fun with it?
It's a little stressful starting off as a new president.
Fun's kind of a strong word.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot of new things, and I'm bugging Brent. Am I supposed to have this on the agenda? And they're going, hey. So I'm
He's
learning.
doing great.
Thank you. Costa, Mr. Hurst.
No report at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. CSEA, Mr. Lamar.
just
Mr. Lamar, you know what? I've been listening to you for 24 years, stand in the back of the classroom. Come up to the podium.
All
like everybody else. That's my last chance to do that.
No report, no kidding. I knew you were going to say that. I just wanted to say what an extraordinary pleasure it is to work with the team here at COS. In the last couple of years, I mean, there's been a lot going on, and the team at all levels has been fantastic. So I just wanted to thank everybody here at COS for doing a great job, and it's great to work with all of you, everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
We like those reports, Steve.
That's a good report.
CASAFA, I don't see Dr. Erickson. Is there someone here for CASAFA? Okay, we'll say no report. That takes us to the information section of the agenda. The first one is, item 1 is annual report on the master plan, an update on state accountability initiatives, student success scorecard, institutional effectiveness partnership, initiative, student success, equity act, and institutional set standards.
And that's our report.
Mr. Cavan.
Thank you, Vice President Zumwalt.
You should have shorter titles.
Well, we should have shorter
No
reports.
acronyms for those?
You'll recall that this annual report on the master plan is something that we do every September. It's basically an update on how our strategic plan went the year before and the effect it had on the master plan. And we're going to work through that this evening, but 3 years ago we made the determination to also include the annual reports that we need to give for the various state initiatives that we're working on. Here's just a sampling of them right here. So tonight, we're going to work our way through these 5 reports. The first one's institution set standards. That's an ACCJC requirement. On to, again, the annual report on the master plan and its companion the annual report to the community, which we've got right here. You're certainly welcome to grab a copy of this annual report to the community on your way out this evening. And then we'll finish up with a quick look at how we're doing on the Student Success Scorecard. That was implemented as part of the 2012 Student Success Act statewide. And then I'll provide an update on the Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative, the IEPI goals. I'll provide a status report on those as well. I should also acknowledge Dr. Dolly Oster for all of his help in putting these reports together. Not easy to consolidate these down into the 30 slides or so that we have. I think he came to me initially with 125, so thank you, Dolly, for allowing.
We'll get those at retreat.
For allowing. Hey, don't give it away, Hurst. Don't give it away. I'm going to move fairly quickly through these. Certainly, board members, stop me at any time and ask questions. And if you have questions at the end, we'll certainly take time. But the first one is institution set standards, and you'll all recall from previous presentations that our institution set standards through the ACCJC need to be reasonable, appropriate, and realistic. This is a summary of previous years. Thank you, Megan, for my little cheat sheet here. Summary of previous years, you'll see we've had 4 years worth of institution set standards. We're required by the ACCJC to recommend and set a minimum level for all of these different metrics down the left-hand side. We come up with that by looking at a multi-year district average. And what you don't see there is we also disaggregate this data and we look at the minimum set standards for each of our smaller populations, subpopulations, if you will, and that factors into our recommendation as well. So as we've reported the last 4 years, you'll see that for each of those categories, we've met our minimum institution set standards. This year, they've asked us not only to set our minimum, but also to set an aspirational goal. And so what you see there circled down the middle is the averages for the last 6 years. And then going back to the left, we decrease those numbers by 5% and then 10%, and then going forward we do the same thing. And so the shaded boxes are where we settled on for our minimum and our aspirational. Let that just sink in a little bit. So for instance, on course completion, our average has been 70%. We're going to set our minimum, because these things do fluctuate, we're going to set our minimum at 67%. And we're going to set our aspirational, our stretch goals, at 74%, 5% either way. Down in the certificates and degrees, we've gone a little higher for our aspirational. Board members, anything on those charts before I move on? I know that's a lot to swallow.
I like the recap here, though. This is a recap of that, right?
Yeah, it is. The next page, we wanted you to see the methodology, but the next page summarizes that. You can see that down there at the bottom for degrees and certificates, we settled on method 2. Slight deviation at the state level, method 1 or method 2, and we don't need to get into it, but we settled on method 2 for both of them. So those are our minimum and stretch goals for the next year. And this next slide just kind of walks through the various constituency groups that we presented this at last spring. You see it came to senior management in February and April. Same thing at DGS and Academic Senate, and then the Dean's Council saw it in March and May. Moving on to the annual college report on the master plan. We're all familiar with our 10-year master plan, 2015 through 2025. We have 4 broad goal areas. We support that every 3 years with our strategic plan, which contains our district objectives as well as our day-to-day actions that support those objectives, which ultimately support the 4 goal areas in our master plan. We are just closing out the 2015 to 18 strategic plan. So in addition to tonight's annual college report, which kind of sums up the 17-18 year, and in addition to this annual college report that we're handing out tonight, we're going to come back in December and give you a little bonus, and that is we'll come back with the cumulative effect of these measures from 2015 through 2018. So you can be looking forward to that. These are our strategic plan assessment results. These can be found online on our research page. Everything that we give you is for the most part summarized. If you're looking for the full publication, look no further than our research page. That's what the report will look like in December when we come back with a cumulative 3-year report on the master plan. And then finally, again, our community college report is available starting tonight. So in district goal number 1, the goal was to increase enrollment by 1.75% annually. And you'll see that for the 16-17 year, we increased by 3.1%. And then this next slide will show that for the 17-18 year, we actually went up by 4.2%. So for a 6 years, the cumulative effect was a growth rate of 16.2%. This is significant. Again, we haven't grown too much that we were to outgrow our resources or outgrow our ability to offer sound educational pedagogy, but we were able to capture any and all funding that the state had available really in that entire 6-year period. We've really found that sweet spot. And oftentimes we received a little bit more funding than was traditionally or initially expected, because so many of the districts in the state are not growing. In fact, several of them, many of them, are declining in enrollment, which made growth dollars available for us if we were increasing at a higher rate than what the state had initially projected. So we've really accomplished everything we set out to accomplish in goal area number 1. Anything there before I move on to goal 2?
In your opinion, is that rate of growth something we can see continuing, or is that maybe a little higher than we expect because recovery from the show cause period?
That's a great question. We think we're long past the time where we're affected at all by show cause. We've gained that back and then continue to grow. We keep telling ourselves that we're going to settle out at about 2% growth, and then when everything shakes out, we end up at 3 or 4%. So we do expect to flatten out at 2%, but we've said that for the last 2 years as well. And the last thing we really want to do is stop the efforts. Most of this growth comes from our outreach efforts in high school. We've been very, very active in all of our district high schools, and we really don't want to stop that, because in addition to just the growth and the funding that comes along with that, we just think those partnerships are fabulous. So
how much of that is more students going to college, and how much of it is more students going to this college?
I don't know that I could fairly answer that. I think if we would survey our feeder districts, they would say they had about the same number of students from their high schools attending college. I don't think that's fluctuated a lot. We may be attracting students from other regions, either the Kern, West Hills, or State Center districts. We've also seen the number of students, the average units taken per student rise. So that's part of the increase in FTES, that I think we've become more efficient and that the average number has gone up there. That's a little bit of in-reach as opposed to outreach. But I don't have a satisfactory answer in terms of whether more students are coming to college or just we're getting more of them. I'm not quite sure. Goal number 2, you'll recall, for us means success. And we're looking at the number of students that are transfer prepared annually. The chart on the left is transfer volume. That's the number of students that actually transfer. And you'll see that the number there for 16-17, that 21.7%, that's artificially high because for one reason or another, the number for 15-16 dipped down a little bit. But over a 6-year period, the number of students transferring out of the College of the Sequoias every year grew by 19%. We're excited about that. In the orange on the right is our transfer prepared students, and we like to keep this one locally. It's not required at the state level, but we really enjoy keeping track of this because these are the students that are prepared to transfer and some of which just choose not to. We can't always affect whether or not students transfer, but it's nice to know that they were prepared to transfer. That number has climbed by 17% in the last 6 years. So again, both those figures outpace the growth of our head count and our FTES. So we feel like we're doing more for the students that are here. This talks about the number of students that earn an associate degree or certificate annually. And you'll see that it was fairly stagnant. It increased by 1%. But as I showed in our convocation slides, the number of degrees and certificates climbed substantially. So what we had was a similar number of students earning certificates or degrees, but many of those students were earning multiple degrees or multiple certificates. This next objective was about increasing course success and completion rates in pre-transfer English, math, and ESL courses annually. Like a lot of districts in the state, we've got some work to do here. You can see the fall course success and retention was essentially sustained, 54% and 86% respectively. We did see a bump in our spring to spring numbers. You'll see that the success rate jumped by 2% and our retention rate went up from 84% to 87%. .4 essentially looks at that same type of thing, only just for the CTE areas, career and technical education. And we're pleased to report that degrees and certificates increase there by 12% in this given time period. It's been a heavy emphasis by Dr. Thad Russell and his group. Is Thad still here? Oh, there he is in the front row. I couldn't see the forest for the trees, sorry, Thad. Their group has done a phenomenal job in our CTE offerings. Again, you can see our success rates remain steady at 70% in the CTE fields. And then into goal area number 3, recall that this is the area for equity. And objective 3.1 was to reduce the achievement gap of disproportionately impacted student groups as identified in our student equity plan. The state gives us all the subpopulations that we need to measure across about 15 different metrics, things like course completion, program completion, 30-unit threshold, math, English, ESL. And any time a subpopulation falls below their colleagues, falls below the average, that would constitute a disproportionately impacted group. And so what we end up with is 178 different potential groups, and 149 of those are almost at or above equity. That's the good news. But out of those 178 possible groups, 11 of them fall below equity, and 18 of them fall far below equity. So those are just some areas that we're working on. This next slide kind of sums that up. And you'll see that our African American students continue to have the largest number of disproportionately impacted group designations. So we may look at one subpopulation, African American males. They may show up 3 or 4 times. They may show up in math and English. They may show up in course completion. They may show up in reaching the 30-unit threshold that the state has set. So that group alone would make up 4 of either the 11 or the 18 groups there in green on the right that were falling below or far below equity. This really helps guide our student success program in order to know where our resources should be spent in order to guide those groups better. But we were very encouraged this past summer, in fact last spring, at graduation. Dr. Ozturk and I and several others went to dinner after graduation, our favorite day of the year, by the way. And as we were just celebrating graduation, having dinner, we talked about just how diverse our graduates were. And it got us to thinking, I wonder how our graduates, this group of graduates, whatever it was, 1,200, how they would compare to the overall demographics of the students that enrolled last fall. It's not a direct correlation because we'd have to kind of track them in cohorts or whatever. We just wanted to look at fall 17, what were the demographics, and how do they compare to our 1,200 graduates last spring? And this gives you a real good indicator that overall we're pretty close. The fall enrollment at 66% Hispanic, 22% Caucasian, and then 13% all other races and ethnicities. And you see the numbers for the all award recipients, for our degree recipients, as well as our certificate recipients. It's still a good guiding light for us. There's still some work left to do here, but we did feel good that none of those numbers were crazy out of whack. Then our final goal area, you'll recall from our master plan, is sustainability. We've set up all these great structures and processes. We don't want to lose it. We want to be able to sustain it, and we have several different strategies for sustaining it, and most of those are contained in our COS 2.0 manuals in terms of the way we survey and assess and evaluate and then continuously improve for the next year. At the next board meeting, you'll see our new COS 2.0 manuals, the resource allocation manual, the governance and decision-making manual, the integrated planning manual. You'll see those again, and you'll see the changes we made over the summer as a result of surveying and assessing and evaluating. That's just one way we sustain all the good things that we do on an annual basis. And then one small thing we do is we've got 3 senates, and we have 5 councils, 14 committees for a total of 22 participatory governance groups. And every year we survey those groups, giving them a fairly detailed survey to take. And of those 22, 20 of them felt like they had met and were effective in completing their initiatives for the year. That's just one more small way that we ensure sustainability of the COS 2.0 model from one year to the next. Moving on, I'm going to jump right into our Student Success Scorecard report. Again, this came out of the Student Success Act statewide. 2012. Difficult to read, I realize that. I'm looking at a computer screen and it's difficult to read, so I apologize to that. But the first line, under the dark part, the first line is, it says statewide, and it shows the completion statewide for students that were prepared, unprepared, and overall. The next major heading is persistence, and it shows the percentage of students that persisted, first of all, that were prepared, unprepared, and overall. And then the 30-unit threshold, same thing, for prepared, unprepared, and overall. And then remedial for math, English, and ESL. And it shows statewide, and then we come down next with the cohort. The cohort means locally. And again, this goes in six-year trends. So for the 17-18 year, we were looking back at the students that started college for 2011-12. And you can compare our cohort numbers right across the top in comparison to the statewide averages. And on average, they run anywhere from 3 to 4% below the statewide averages in most of these places. For instance, in completion for prepared students, statewide, the average was 70.4%. Here at COS, for that cohort that started in 11-12, the percentage is 67%. For unprepared students, statewide, completion was 41%. For us, it's 37.3%. And then overall, statewide, 48.2% of students that started in 11-12 completed, and for us, it was 43.6% completed. The next 13 lines are our data that we've disaggregated by gender, by age, and by race. All this is available, first of all, at the state website, but then also off our research page as well. You can see we've shown the overall rates for those three areas. Persistence, 73.9%. For 30 units, 2/3, and for completion, 43.6%.
One thing I noticed in the data up here that makes me wonder is if you take the statewide numbers and the cohort numbers, we're not that far out on any of them except one, ESL. Our numbers are far below the state average, and I suppose it'd be a good project coming up to find out why.
Very good. We'll look into that and report back to you, Mr. Zumwalt. We've pulled out the overall persistence rate, 5-year trend. Pretty self-explanatory. We've increased this from below 2/3 to 74%. This next one shows our math and English transfer level achievement. I've got a summary page immediately after this one. This is the raw data. This first one is math. I don't think, down there in the left-hand corner, we have our statewide numbers. And then we've circled the 15-16 cohort, which is the latest that we have data on this. I don't think anybody at the statewide level or here locally would be happy with those numbers, which is a big part of why AB 705 was passed. I think legislators looked at statewide data for math and English over the last 10 years, 20 years, and realized that oftentimes when students test into a level or two below transfer level, students ended up getting lost in the sequence. AB 705 will start most, if not all, students at the transfer level, and then simultaneously be provided with support so that they don't have to work their way through a sequence of 3, and at some colleges, 4 classes. They'll go directly to transfer level or 1 level below transfer level and be supported simultaneously while they're taking that class. So this is exactly the type of data that was used to come up with AB 705, and I have to commend our faculty has been working very, very hard on AB 705 related strategies, and we're very excited to see kind of the various not only strategies but outcomes that come out of that work. English, the numbers are better, but again, I don't know that any of us are satisfied with these. Statewide, it was 41% for 1 year. That means that students pass transfer level English in their first year. The second number, 59%, means they pass it within 2 years. Here locally, those numbers drop to 36%. Pass transfer level English in 1 year, in their first year, and then that number jumps to 54% if you give them the second year. This next one, again, the state tracks this. It's the median earnings change in the area of career and technical education. We show our CTE-related disciplines, and we track those students and how their income levels increased after earning their degree or certificate. And for a sample size of 489 students, the increase was 37%.
After how long? Immediately?
Is it the year following their degree completion, Dolly?
Year before and year after.
Year before and year after.
Well, maybe as a student, they didn't make anything. How do you do this?
They have a formula, but that's a good question. Brent and I were actually talking about that point before. But it looks like they are probably showing students who are already coming as employed.
I think they look at EDD reports, the state does. And for those students that were in the system prior to degree completion, they take what they were earning, if they were in their system, they take what they were earning prior to degree or certificate completion, and then they look at a post-test version, what they were making, and the increase is 37%. It's pretty clunky, and we really don't supply any information other than the students and what degree they got. Everything else comes from sources other than COS. Finally, we felt obligated, because we've done it in the past here, to report on the institutional effectiveness IEPI goals. It's actually Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative. And this came about, 5 or 6 years ago, at the time when many districts in the state were having their issues with the ACCJC, including the College of the Sequoias. But as we know, it certainly wasn't just us. And our chancellor's office felt like they needed to be a more active participant in prepping districts for what the ACC was asking for at that point in time. And so they had several different goals that they wanted us to report on annually. Now the ACCJC has gone through an overhaul, and we've got several different state initiatives that kind of do what this was designed to do. So for this year, they have reported, or they've suspended the reporting requirements, so there's nothing that we need to do on these for this year. We don't know if it'll come back in subsequent years. We don't know if it'll increase, decrease, or go away entirely, but we just felt, you've seen it before in this report, we felt like we needed to at least include it and report that there's no action required this year. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Questions?
I always just like to ask, was there anything in here that surprised you? Or was most of it expected, based on all the work we've done? I mean, I would think yes, but.
Everything in here, we work on, I'm trying to think back to the first time we saw this information. We use all of this information so much in our master plan, in our master planning and our strategic planning, that we've become so familiar with it. No, I don't think so. I think as we were preparing our convocation slides, looking at the number of degrees and certificates, I think that number is about 2,300. I think that surprised all of us a little bit, especially our management team, because it was, I may have shared this at convocation, and I may have just dreamed it, but scary when you're dreaming about these things. But at it was probably 4 years ago in one of our management institutes, we were discussing Colin's book, Good to Great, and he talks about having a BHAG. I did talk about this at convocation. Big, hairy, audacious goal. And other initiatives ended up crowding out us even setting a BHAG. But one of the things in that 2-day session that we talked about as a BHAG was increasing degrees and certificates. And we talked about setting a crazy number like 2020 by 2020. And because at the time, we weren't anywhere close to 2,020 degrees and certificates. And yet, just through the things that we've been working on over the last 4 years, we've crushed that number, and it's only 2018. Again, for last year, for 17-18, it was 2,300 degrees and certificates. And so that was a little bit of a surprise when we started kind of looking at that data and reflecting back on those conversations we had 4 years ago. 2,020 degrees and certificates seemed like a crazy number, and it wasn't crazy at all. We flew by that over the last 2 years.
Awesome. Good, thank you.
You know, something I picked up off of this is the slide you had about this earning change. Even though I don't understand how they got it, let's assume it's a valid thing. I'm sure it is. There's some important things on here about reaching perhaps some of the students we ordinarily wouldn't. I remember when I was a senior in high school, my physics teacher asked me, "Zumwalt, what are you going to do for a living?" I said, "I'm going to be a math and science teacher." He said, "Well, why don't you be an engineer?" And I said, "Well, what the hell's that?" You know, he said, "Well, they make twice as much as teachers." And I said, "Oh, tell me more." Well, those that know me know I've been probably a lousy teacher. But look at this. The median changes, the ones that are over 60%, police academy, administration of justice, automotive technology. How many kids out there that could go into automotive technology don't, because they have no idea how much they can improve their lot in life? Those over 40% are business and commerce general, and there was another one over 40. What was it? I guess that's the only other one. Anyway, automotive technology, police academy, and just taking business and commerce in general. When you go out and recruit these high school kids, maybe if they knew some of this stuff, it might inspire them to come to college.
John, I'm glad you brought that up. Thad could probably talk for a couple hours on the things that we do and the fact that we use exactly that kind of information at our high school and even in our in-reach here with our current students, whether it's our new career services director and the use of career coach that's in our career center that we take out to high schools and so forth. We have CTE, student success coordinators, that are assigned to subpopulations of students within the CTE fields, just like the other coordinators in our student success program. They use this kind of information extensively, and it's less clunky. It's through Career Coach. It's not based on a 6-year-old cohort like the Student Success Scorecard is. We have to report this once a year to our board, but the work we do with students is more up to date using Career Coach, and it does exactly that. It shows students just how much they can expect to improve their earning potential by getting a degree or certificate.
I'm more than pleased to see you're ahead of me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, that's enlightening. That leads us to information on number 2, low enrolled classes justification report. Dr. Cerna.
Now we're gonna miss Earl. Right, Jennifer, now you're gonna miss Earl. He would have a question. Earl likes this report.
Well, Mr. Zumwalt already called me about it, so he's adapting for
Because Earl called
for
him.
Earl already. We're all good.
He's picking up the slack.
Okay, you have in front of you the low enrolled justification report that we're required by Board Policy 4071 to present to the board. And if you can look at the first page, we have listed, the way this works is that we list any of the classes that are under the requirements of our board policy, which is 20 for a lecture class or 15 for a lecture lab course. And then we put a justification based on what the AP or BP indicates. And so we separate these by division. So the first is in agriculture, and you have the explanations, and they all fit in within the justifications for the AP or BP. And in the next section is business, then you have consumer family studies, and you can see there's numerous reasons, but there's single section for the class or the only class available in certain campuses, or they're required for the faculty load. And the one thing I want to say, a lot of these are, there are 16 students, 19 students. We keep them on the report because they are, they don't meet that required minimum of 20, but they still, 19 students are in there. We really wouldn't consider counseling a class with 19 students in there. On the second page, you have English. And we have several classes that are dual enrollment, and oftentimes we have the less than that required number in those classes. And we're working on building that, and so we want to keep those classes there. We have fine arts. Some of these are required for theater productions or running the gallery. Industry technology, most of those required for certificates or degrees. The next page is language and communication studies. That's our new division. And most of these are one-time sections or two of them are for running the newspaper. The next one is math and engineering, and there's an update in the report that should not have said statistics. That was a typo in my office. It should have said statics. Thank you, Mr. Zumwalt. And then we have one in science. The next is social science. Again, most of these you see they're 18, 19, and they're required courses. And then student services, there's a few courses there. Those are the low enrolled courses. On the next page, we are also required to tell you about any canceled courses. And so the first page, you can see that we just had low enrollment, that they just didn't reach even close to the minimum in those areas. And then there's a couple where we just didn't have an instructor, and that's really unfortunate when that happens, and we try to avoid that at all costs. And on the last page, you have a few low enrolled in language communication studies and math and engineering. So I know that was a lot, and I went through it quick.
Any questions of Dr. Cerna? I guess I need to act like Earl since he's not here.
Oh, man.
I'm real pleased to see this math and engineering and science numbers. They're low, but they're much higher than they've ever been before. And I know that's because, first of all, you have an outstanding teacher and Mr. Owens, but more than that is he's got tremendous support from the administration to make that possible. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
You're welcome.
That leads us to information on number 3, quarterly financial report. Ms. Staton.
Okay, quarterly or almost quarterly, we bring our quarterly financial reports that go to the state. And the one I'm presenting tonight is our fourth quarter of 17-18. So it's as close as you're going to see to closing the books. It was actually due mid-August, and then we file an annual that's due mid-September. And I'll have the quarterly here. The annual I've kind of summarized in the budget report that you'll see in a few minutes. But if you look at the first column, second column, third column, give you some history, the last 3 years. And it says projected 17-18 because we had not closed our books at this time. But we did reflect $65 million in revenues. This is our general fund unrestricted, $62 million in expenditures, and revenues over expenditures of $3.274 million. Now, when we closed, we were really close, but we were actually 28,000 less. So I think it was closer to 3.25 or something like that. We'll get to it. And then fund balance, when you get down to the bottom, you can see we were at 19.8 million. And again, I think we were at 19.82 or something on actuals. But that ended up being 32%. So that's where our fund balance is currently. You can also see how it's grown over the last few years from 15 to 23 to 29, and then this year at 32. Our FTES, if you scroll down a bit, this is all the items we report to the board, to the state. You can see how that's grown as well. And 16-17, we reported 9,700. We actually shifted 88. That would have been 88 higher. But last year, we really did have a stellar year at 10,337. And that did include the 88 we shifted from the prior year. But we certainly grew. It was about a 5.5% growth last year, so very significant. Cash. This just reports to the state what our ending cash was, which was $26.3 million. But what might be of interest again is to go back 3 years and see how low we were. We were at 8.9 almost, and then 16.8. So we're really in a good cash position now. Our fund balance does not equal our cash, obviously because of some payables, but we're in a good, healthy position. And then the revenues and expenditures for year-to-date, this section just shows you 17-18. The first column is adopted, and you can see at the very bottom we projected that we would probably end with about a 32% fund balance. The current budget, the next column, was working, and as we reworked our budget throughout the year, if everything had been spent as we thought it would have been at 29% fund balance. But as we were getting closer to close, we ended up with that $19.85 million in fund balance, which really is closer to 32%. The next question, has the district settled any employee contracts during this quarter? And since this was the quarter ending June 30th, 2018, the answer was no, we didn't settle anything. We were very close, but not until the next quarter. The next question is, did the district have significant events for the quarter? We actually answered yes. I'm not sure if we needed to, but their examples are issuance of COPS or trans or things like that. Because we did refinance our COPS, Certificate of Participations, we answered yes, and then we explained below that it was $2.665 million. We lowered our interest rate from an average of 5.1 to 3.95%, and we reduced the time for repayment from 17 years to 10 years, all of that saving about $600,000 in interest. So gave them the reasons. And do we have any significant fiscal problems? We answered no to both of those. So it's really our report to the state, mostly closing out 17-18. So any questions there? Hope that made sense.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. That's for information.
I didn't ask, but any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, that then leads us to the consent calendar. I'll read off the items in the consent calendar. We will consider these in a single vote, in that they are typically routine in nature. However, if anyone from the board or the audience wishes to have them removed and treated as a regular item, say so, and I'll do that. First one's the minutes of the previous meeting. Which is item 4. Item 5 is personnel report. Item 6 is payment of bills. Item 7 is CCPT agency service agreement with Visalia Unified School District. I hate acronyms. Stands for California Career Pathways Trust. And 8 is memorandum of understanding with Sequoia's Adult Education Consortium, and 9 is out-of-state travel request for the equestrian team. Does anyone from the board of the audience wish to remove any item to be considered separately?
I don't, but I have a comment on number 9, just to share this, because I like when these things happen. I had to travel to Porterville to get something at Tractor Supply for my kids, and I was checking out, and the girl, we just started a conversation, the cashier that was checking me out, and she happened to be one of the star members of our equestrian team. I'm not sure how we got on the topic, and then we ended up at COS, and she was on the equestrian team, and she actually said, thank you in advance for always letting us travel to these great places. I'm going to come home a winner this year. So anyway, that was kind of fun.
So you're stuck
Yeah.
voting for that.
I saw it on here and thought, she was thanking me in advance. She must have known, or she somehow knows the board has something to do with it, which I thought was interesting for a young lady of, however, she's probably 20, 21, but she said she was going to make these trips and come home a winner, she said. So anyways, trivia.
Okay, rather than.
I move we approve.
Just a second.
Second.
Just a second. Rather than remove one, I want to do the same thing you did, Lori, talking about the personnel report. The students were here earlier. I'm sorry that they left, but they can listen, they can look at the remarks in the tape. The Board of Trustees has historically deferred personnel issues to the president of the college, and the board has never chosen to gotten involved in personnel issues unless there's allegations of illegality or of procedural errors, which I didn't hear. And therefore, I, for one, do not intend to remove this from the agenda. Is there any motion?
I move we approve.
Second.
Been moved and approved. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I count 3 yes. That takes us to item 10, annual appropriations limit. Ms. Staton.
Okay, you as board members see this every year. It's also known as a GAN limit. And we need your approval, and you just need to understand what our calculations were this year. The state sets an appropriations limit, and by law, we're not supposed to go over it. And all local education agencies are given a calculation that they're not supposed to go over, and then they add those all up at the state level, and the state is not allowed to go over the total of all of those. Having said that, our calculation for this year was 119 million, and the amount of appropriation state allocation that came our way was only 65 million. So we weren't even close, but again, it's just a calculation that we're required to perform for the state. And in the resolution, you can see that we actually go back and look at 17-18, and we also recalculate an actual appropriation for that. And that was almost 110 million, of which we were below that as well. So we have a resolution for you.
So if we can't come with 110 million, this is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion accordingly.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Megan, please poll the board.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Zumba?
Aye. Item number 11 is a public hearing on the 2018-19 district budget. See, I need to open a public hearing, is that correct? Or do we have a staff report first, or how do you want to do that? Let's have a staff report. Let's have a staff report first.
That sounds good to me. Okay, I'll present the budget then. The board agenda item that you, oh good, I do have a pointer, that you see in your handouts did summarize our tentative 18-19 budget versus our final. And you can see there were pretty significant changes, but we'll get into that. Expenditures likewise, we did increase our expenditures from the tentative that you saw in June. And before I go too far into it, I have a PowerPoint that tries to summarize our budget book. I try to make the PowerPoint not as long as the budget book, I really do. But the budget book itself, I really do have to take a minute and thank Linda McCauley's our Chief Accounting Officer, and she works very diligently with Leangela Miller-Hernandez, who is our Director of Budgets in Categorical, and Karen Pauls actually puts it all together. And so I stand up here and present, but there's a lot of detail line item work that goes into this, and I just want to thank those ladies. They work extremely hard. Okay, so our budget for this year, the book, the PowerPoint doesn't really give the pages in the book, but occasionally if I remember to, I will reference it. This year is quite unique because we have a complete change in our funding formula. So anyone who's been around for the last 40 years knows we were funded one way, and now we're funded another. And there's 3 components. The first, currently, we're going to have 70% of our funding based on full-time equivalent students and our base allocations. Used to be 100%. That's how we were funded. Now it's 70%. So what's the other 30? 20% is going to be what the state calls equity. It's a supplemental allocation, and it's based on the number of Pell Grant students, College Promise, or Board of Governors waiver, and AB 540, which is our DREAM Act students. So it tends to supplement the allocation based on low income or socioeconomic needs. 10% for this year is based on student success, and you would think that would be real simple, but no, let's see, it's 21 components, 7 criteria, and then each of those get a bump up if it's a Pell student, and each gets a bump up in funding if it's a BOG student. So we actually have dollars that we tie to all these. But these are the 7 components, so if we accomplish these, we make more, we get more resources and have more funding. Associates degrees for transfer, credit certificates, which is 18 units or more, 9 units for CTE, transfers to 4-year institutions, transfer level English and math completion. And the last one that's a little hard, but we've talked a few times tonight, attained a regional living wage. And how is that defined, and how do you prove that, and how do you report that to the state? I won't explain all that. And then just so you know, these components are shifting. Next year it's 65, 20, 15%, and then 2 years out it'll be 60, 20, and 20. And that's the true new funding formula. So a lot of changes. Just some components of this one, we do have a 2.71% COLA, which amounted to about $2 million, I'm sorry, about $1.7 million for us. Growth and access funds were part of this calculation. It was supposed to be 1.71%. But again, just so you know, we grew by over 549 over the prior year. That's $2 million for us. And that means the state was funding us for 5.5% growth. So we chose a really good year to grow a lot. Yeah.
I'm sorry, would you give me the numbers again about how the funding will change? What will it go to?
Okay, so I was showing 70, 20, and 10, and down at the bottom, it's going to move to 60% FTES. The 20% equity stays the same, and then success will be 20.
It goes to,
so,
it's 10% goes to 15, then the 20.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next year is 65, 20, 15. Yeah, if you have any questions, just stop me. We also have a base allocation of $7.831 million. I think it's almost $4 million just for being a college, but then like $1.25 million each for the centers. And now, just so everyone knows, we reached the 10,000 FTES mid-sized college. So we get an extra $1.2 million, and that we are guaranteed now for 3 more years. So that's great news. This is a big change because the tentative adopted that we brought to you in June was based on the old funding formula. This now has our new funding formula, and you'll see an increase of over $6 million in our state allocation. So that was the large change. Overall, we have a 13.71% increase in state revenues, and how often have we ever been able to say that? We're actually in the top 10% of the colleges in the state in terms of the percentage we're receiving. So we did fare well under this new budget. Our budget's built on 10,153 and change. That's an odd number, but just so you know what FTS does here, the state's going to use it for 2 purposes. The first is, what was your prior year FTS, and that determines your status, mid-sized college, large, regular, and then they'll hold you harmless for 3 years. So we were really glad to be over 10,000 last year. But then for FTES purposes, they take your last 3 years and they average them. And that's what you'll be funded for FTS purposes. So it's kind of bifurcated in that manner. A couple other things, plant maintenance and instructional support. You might recall that we used to use our instructional support to fund our technology equipment refresh every year. Well, we've always received at least $500,000, at least the years I've been here, even as much as $1 million. This year, the state's only sending us $256,000. So because we had more revenues, one of our base budget augmentation decisions was to fund those computer refreshes out of our unrestricted general fund, free up these funds to be decided annually. But for now, we have $128,000 each for scheduled maintenance or instructional equipment, unless we come up with other one-time funds for instructional equipment, which we're working toward. Guided pathways. For 18-19, we have a little over 400,000. It's 1.25 million over 5 years, so it's not really ongoing. But we did receive 342,000 last year, 411 this year. We have 750,000 because we didn't spend any last year. We rolled it over. This is a new state initiative, among many of the others, to support development of an integrated approach to student success through Guided Pathways framework. And our president, Calvin, and our provost, Robinson, are very closely involved in that. So college promise funds, 414,000 ongoing. And I do want to kind of jog your memory, board members. We implemented a local college promise reimbursement program. And we talked about it for 1 year only to wait and see if the state was going to have these funds ongoing. The state has decided to make the funds ongoing. We can, of course, analyze that year by year. But we only estimated the cost at around $100,000. And we won't know that cost till the end of this year. For those that may not know in the audience, we're reimbursing students who don't get other financial aid if they want to apply for this. If they take and pass 15 units in fall and 15 units in spring, their first year here, we will reimburse them tuition. So that money is there, it's ongoing, and we'll see how it works this year and hopefully have some form of continued program there. Prop 39 Energy, just to let you know, our last year was last year, but we did carry over almost 270,000 this year. Prop 51 bond facility projects. You've probably heard discussion about that, but our basic skills building was not funded this year, and this was rather disappointing to me and the senior management here. But there were originally, when Prop 51 was passed, November 2016, Board of Governors sent a list to the Department of Finance and said, here's our 29 projects. These are what you fund because we know how much money we have. This is what should be funded. We were in those 29. The state chipped away and they ultimately funded, I think, 22 to 24 of them, something like that. Maybe 25, and there were 4 or 5 remaining, and we thought we'd be funded this year, and the state did not fund us. The money's still, the bonds, the authority is available. Anyway, so having said that, the bad news is we don't just automatically get it next year. We fall back now, and we compete with about 39 other community college projects for state funds. Our Dean of Facilities says we should compete very well. We really should, and now we have a 10% match. But we just don't know. We'll find out probably next May revise where the winds are blowing with that. But we're just going to continue to monitor. I'm not at all saying we're going to look into passing a bond soon, but if the state's not going to fund it, we have to make some decisions of what priority this is and how we would fund it. Do we pass a bond? Do we just renovate the buildings that is there rather than leveling it and building a new one? But for your information, the industry and technology programs from the Buckeye building were moved downtown over the summer to the Tulare downtown annex because we were in motion to get that money and start our basic skills building. But anyway, that's where we are right now. So that's kind of a unique turn of events. PERS and STIRS, I will show you another slide, but suffice it to say the costs march on and increase every year, but we have done a great job funding them. 18-19 increased costs of $844,000. Those were budgeted last year. We're in great shape. 19-20 and 2021, those are budgeted in advance, and they're both in our final adopted budget, even though we haven't reached those years. So we're very good there. That only leaves less than $400,000 to reach full funding from what the state, both PERS and STIRS are telling us. Sorry, I'm going to need water now and then. I'll show you a slide that'll explain that a little bit more. Student success and support, you've heard a lot about. Student equity, basic skills. They're all combined now at the state level into something called Student Equity and Achievement Program, kind of an integrated program. And we have what do we call it? The the joint planning initiative. Yeah, from our angle. But, so the state is combining them, yet we're still receiving the money separately and we're still reporting separately. So I think it's kind of an interim year, but that was a big deal. Strong Workforce, you can see, is just a huge program. Our regional allocation is $650,000 approximately. Local is $1.26 million that comes straight to us. And Dean Russell is highly involved in that. But these dollars come for 3 years at a time. So when I ask Leangela, what's our funding, she kind of has to dive into a spreadsheet because you can get the money, but you have 3 years to spend it. So then you have the money you received last year and you have 3 years. So it's a little hard, but suffice it to say that's our average. And we're doing a lot with those funds, with that program. So almost as small as President Calvin's slide, this is our PERS and STRS increases. The first line is where we are, 18-19. The second line is what we've funded to. We have funded through 2021. And if you look at the numbers to the right, you can see these huge jumps every year, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000 plus. But then in 2021, it drops off. So that's our remaining 397,000, all to say we've primarily funded all of our increases. Now, the caveat is, if you look to the left yellow column, those zeros for STRS, we're supposedly fully funded with our STRS requirements. But STRS is still unfunded at the state level and pretty largely unfunded. So I do anticipate there'll be some more requirements coming our way. We'll see. PERS is actually in a better position at the state level, but it would be 4 more years till we're fully funded there. In case you've noticed that these numbers bounce around a little bit, the state always sends us recalculations, but in addition, we hired quite a few we hired 16 new staff this year on top of 16, 15, 18, in prior years. And we increased our staff a little bit more through our, what we call our Tier 3 budget augmentations. All of that, a 6.5% salary increase. So these numbers have gone up a little bit if you're tracking, but from what you've seen before. FTES, I won't go into great detail, but there's a few of us that monitor our FTES closely. This just shows what was last year, because in the current year, the way we're calculating things, it won't be quite as cut and dried. But that's how we arrived at our 10,337 in what we earned 17, 18, and what we're basing, these many calculations for 18, 19 on. Mm-hmm. And this is a slide you're very familiar with. What's interesting, we always point out 08, 09 through 10, 11 when we were over 10,000, and you can look just to the right and see, well, that was great that we reached 10,500, but the state was not funding us for it. State was funding us always about 8,500 to 9,000 FTS for a good long time. And then you can see 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18. This is when the state started funding us more, and that's part of why we've had better financial years. Looking ahead, I don't know what our actual FTS will be. I just grabbed what we reported last year. But what the state is saying they'll fund us is that 3-year average of 10,153. So that's always kind of interesting. Just for your information and future knowledge, the cost of step and column is generally close to $500,000. And cost of 1% is about $500,000 if you look across the whole general fund. But we do have 6.5% for each of our groups built into this budget, and they're fully budgeted and on the payroll now. Fiscal solvency, I'm getting close here, but fiscal solvency is very tricky. We used to just say, hey, let's assume 0 growth and 1% COLA and project it out. Well, now there's all these components to the funding formula. So just so you know, we're assuming 0 growth in FTS, 0 growth in equity, and 0 growth in success. We're assuming a 1% COLA, and we actually did that for 2 years. There's other movement with the student-centered funding formula. And as you can see, as FTS goes down and success goes up, our actual funding is going to decrease. It's still more than we had the year before, but it's not quite as favorable for us. Having said that, what if equity and success, what if it's not 0 growth, but, well, actually, I think we will grow in those. Let's take FTS. what if FTS declines? And not that FTS, we expect it, but something with this AB 705 and multiple measures and having students, they're no longer taking 2 years remedial, 1 year remedial, and then math. 2 years remedial, 1 year remedial, and then English. We're going to be having them many going straight into math and English and taking some kind of concurrent supplemental courses. But we do think that there'll be a little drop in FTS. We don't know what that will look like yet because there's not as many courses that the students will be taking. So all that to say, this is quite a broad stroke. And the good news is with this broad stroke is we're looking at a good surplus both years with those simple assumptions. We're assuming no budget augmentations other than I have $200,000 in just those required augmentations that may crop up. We're assuming 4 retirees, 6 new faculty. It could be a lot different, but it's the proportion I want you to notice there. It could be 8 retirees and 10 new faculty. For FON purposes, there's not a large reach or climb. We've pretty much reached what we believe is the state FON, and so now it's just as our students grow, then our faculty will grow.
What was the FON again, Christine?
The FON? Ooh.
No, not the number, just full-time obligation.
Oh,
number.
sorry.
Just, yeah.
We know full-time obligation number. I like to throw acronyms around.
You know, with new trustees coming on, you guys are gonna have to knock off this acronym stuff.
Someone will have to, I don't know, remind me. But anyway, so the good news is we're looking at keeping something close to that same surplus, even with building some additional costs in. But I want the board to know we're being very cautious with this surplus because we don't know if there's going to be a drop in FTS. We don't know how this new funding formula is going to look, you know, probably until the May revise next year. I am not going to read the next 9 slides, but I want you to know that as we go through our process of deciding what resource allocations are going to be awarded, we look at how do they tie to our district goals and objectives. And I just took the 4 goals, the first one being increased student enrollment, and you can see things like, you know, admissions and records equivalence, ambassador program, printing costs for student information, how those things would tie there. And what we did is we took each of our resource allocations, be they staffing or budgets, and we put them under the goals that they tie to. Just so you know, many of them tied to more than one goal. So you might see a particular resource allocation listed 2 or 3 times. For goal 2, improve the rate at which students complete degrees, transfers, and certificates. I listed the first 3 objectives because 2.4 was a little unique. It just had to do with CTE, and I think I listed it directly under the ones that tied to CTE, such as the Tulare Downtown Annex and some of those costs. There's another 2.4 with the electrician training, administrative management costs. Goal 3, strategically tailor and implement academic programs and student service programs that meet the unique needs and demands of students in the workforce. So again, there's the 2 objectives under it and all the resource allocations that tie to that. So it's there for people's review. They can pull up this PowerPoint and see what did we award in new resource allocations and what do they tie to. Goal 4 is more of our overarching. It has to do with best practices, sustaining effective operational systems, continuous improvement. So a lot of times things that may not fit somewhere else fall into this goal, like new door locking software for maintenance costs, which was truly a need, but it may not tie directly to some of those other goals. So we have quite a few listed under goal 4. And so if you have time, you can read those. Categorical programs, bottom line, we had 12 million in 17-18. We have 12.4 million in revenues, 18-19. The biggest change there being that College Promise that we talked about, that local promise reimbursement program. And most everything else was pretty similar. I know some of you are always very interested in our ag budgets. What we did is we presented them in a different manner than you've seen them before, but hopefully they're readable. These are also in the budget book. And so total ag instructional units, bottom line, they're not there to make money. We're looking at $152,000 deficit, only $34,000 in revenue, but we support with $33,000 of lottery and then our farm operations support as well. So this is how our ag instructional units, the expenditures, and just needed to teach and instruct our students. The farm.
When do
yeah.
we anticipate our almonds producing?
I think this is the
5
last.
years, wasn't it?
Oh, I thought it might be 4.
Usually about
No.
4.
Yeah, I think next year
Okay.
we'll have some
That'll
almond
be light.
revenue. Yep.
It won't be a big moneymaker, but.
Yeah, yeah, we
couple
hope
more
so.
years.
So what we do on this next slide is we take our instructional units, whoops, that went, and we combine it at the bottom with our farm operations. But farm operations overall, you can see, we were looking at 437 or 438 in revenue, a net surplus of 117,000. Something I wanted to note, this 80,000 in expenses for almonds, that's just a placeholder so we have spending authority. Any expenditures, since we're not producing yet, get capitalized at the end of the year. So that net revenue will actually be higher because that expense won't be there. And then we combine it with those instructional units, and together we are looking at a $35,000 deficit. But again, if the almond expenses come out, it'll be a small surplus. The other funds, if you ever want to know, hey, what do we have in our other funds? This is what we have. We have Farm Special Reserve, Linwood Reserve, capital projects. This actually doesn't, it just shows revenue and expense, but the budget book itself, if you want to know what fund balances we have, it's all in there. So things like capital projects, this is assuming everything we've set money aside for, we spend next year, which probably won't be the case. We have our general obligation bonds all listed, and we have to report those for the county. And then, last slide. Okay. So I hope I didn't rush through things too fast, but this last slide, I just wanted to go over closing the books of 17-18 because there were so many moving parts. And you might recall we moved some funds out in June, anticipating that we would have one-time funds. And it's kind of like, so why did we still have $3.25 million in one-time funds fall as we closed our books? So I kind of wanted to just walk us back through that. Actual FTS, 549 brought in $2.772 million. That's a lot. And we couldn't count those FTS in January or March. We needed to wait till the end of the year, and we knew that that was real money, and that's when we booked it as we closed. Pre-funding STRS and PERS, we have talked often about how that creates one-time funds. Reaching mid-sized college, we actually reached it last year, which we weren't sure about, but that brought in $1.2 million that we had not budgeted anywhere. So new revenues. And then we can look at what we did talk about at the June board meeting, what we did approve. We moved a lot of funds out to capital projects. We also chose to leave $1 million in general fund, maybe for instructional equipment during 18-19. So you move those out, and then there was an amount that did fall unspent at the end of the year. The math here just works to be about $773,000. Just so you know, it was a little over $1 million in actuality. But this was me trying to back out from just large numbers. And dollars fell at the end of the year, bringing our fund balance to $19.8 million, which is 32%. If you look at what we call prepaids, sometimes we prepay subscription or other expenditures out of a prior year. It's not a real expense, but it's booked as an asset. So if you take those out and you take out carryover that's approved, which was $316,000, it was $18.48 million, which is 30%. So that's how we closed the year. We always have prepaids though, so it's not something, you can kind of take it out on paper, but it truly is there. And that's the end. So thank you for bearing with me. Questions, comments, and then we would do the hearing.
We like these budget reports.
Thank you. Without our President Nunes here, I was a little worried. I'm glad you-
Well, it's unfortunate you waited till I was leaving to come up with all this money.
Now you have to do a public hearing.
Oh, that's right. Come back here where thank you, Greg. I would've got lost. Okay, open a public hearing on the budget for 18-19. Would anybody like to testify? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there some other, I don't remember, it seems like there's a follow-up about where this is available for people to review, and
Well, it was posted
Typically.
in advance, but it will be, let me think. It, basically just going to our website and going to this board meeting. It'll be part of the board packet at any
Okay.
point. It's also on our budget committee.
You need us to approve this, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I move we approve.
Second.
There's a second, any further discussion?
Thank you to all of you who helped put the budget together again.
Wait a minute, let's see here, wait a minute. Let's,
Yeah,
we're approving what?
the budget.
The budget or
The
that's right, this is
The
the second,
final
this
budget.
was the second public hearing, wasn't it? Right, all right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please note 3-0. I think that brings us about to the end of the agenda. I was board president for a long time. I haven't been in a long time, and I sort of stumbled through this. I called Antonio Anthony. I used to have a fellow I thought a great deal of. Used to work for named Anthony Gutierrez, so there you go. But I want you to report to Kim when he comes back that I motivated Mr. Lamar to get the best report he's ever given. Meeting adjourned.